Let's talk about ecological literacy. I worked at Xerox Palo Alto Research Center with a guy named Alan Kay, who's one of the fathers of the personal computer. And I left Alan's group to go work with this guy, Barry Commoner, who was on the front cover of Time magazine during Earth Day in 1970. He was the guy who wrote the 4 Laws of Ecology. He wrote 6 books and 300 scientific papers. He died about 3 weeks ago. I worked with him for 4 years. I thought he was really extraordinary. I didn't agree with everything he said, but I really thought he was an amazing and insightful person. And what's sad about his death is not, he lived till 95, he had a wonderful life. What's sad is that we are left with a world that is still largely ecologically illiterate. That's a big problem. Because we're managing a planet that requires a lot of ecological literacy. Yes, we may build artificial systems that override some of the natural systems, and that's great. I'm all for that. But at least for the time being, we're dependent on natural systems for our food and for other requirements of daily life, and we really need to get with the program to understand how these systems work. It's a challenge for those of you who want to work in exponential technologies. Let's look at ethical literacy. So there are many aspects of ethical literacy, and how many of you are technical? How many of you come from a technical background? Raise your hands. So some of you, maybe a third, 40%. Well, I come from a technical background, and I can tell you that usually when technical people are forced to take a class in ethics, a lot of us tend to go to sleep because it's just, it's not clear how it relates. So I want to stand before you and look you in the eye and tell you this stuff matters. So let me give you some examples. I put together the next slide, piece by piece. It's about just one aspect of ethics. It's about inclusion. Think about all the conflict in the world today. All about, it's us, we're the in-group, we're the moral people, we're the immoral people, we're the good guys, you're the bad guys. And you may notice there's a little twist on the average thing. Yes, that is Leonard Nimoy, Dr. Spock in the Star Trek series. And yes, that's the Obamas, and yes, that's Michael Jackson. But the thing that is unusual in this inclusiveness picture is we've got non-human species that are part of the picture, and another non-human species part of the picture, a robot. So I think all of these creatures are going to end up in part of the inclusiveness dialogue as we move forward. Just watch. It'll happen. Just recently, this year, Philip Lowe and Stephen Hawking, the physicist, put out a paper on the fact that a dolphin and other intelligent non-human species are capable of consciousness and ought to be treated accordingly. So I think we're going to change our perspective on what that's about. I also want to tell you that even though I'm an AI guy, analytical intelligence is not enough. So let me be absolutely crystal clear about this. Anybody know who these distinguished gentlemen are? Yes. Sorry? Yes, they're Nazis at the Nuremberg trial. Yeah, and these guys killed 10 million of their fellow human beings without any remorse whatsoever. Nobody questioned their intelligence. I have no doubt that they were smart, but they were ethical morons. Could I be more clear than that? Ethical morons. But these guys look like amateurs compared to these Americans. These guys killed 2 million plus people a year, or about 100 million or more people around the world in the 20th century. 100 million people murdered. How? They plotted how to get get people to smoke cigarettes. And they actually added addictive chemicals to the nicotine in cigarettes to make the cigarettes more addictive, as if nicotine alone was not enough. So these guys also are ethical morons. How about these folks? Ken Lay and the Enron people, how many have heard of these guys? Well, there have been a variety of economic meltdowns from our fellow human beings in recent history. These people still share the planet with us. And they think it's okay to rip you off to make themselves richer. Hopefully we won't emulate their behavior with AI and other technologies. So we need to change our decision-making systems. Anybody know who this is?
Those who died.
Yeah. This is the Space Shuttle Challenger crew from 1986, including Krista Macaulay, the first teacher in space. NASA had a decision to make. Ordinarily, they're a very smart agency, but they had a decision to make about whether to launch the shuttle Challenger. And they had already delayed the launch a couple of times, and they were very reluctant. They had the press there, they had congressmen and senators and VIPs, and they didn't want to have them come back later. They had already delayed things a lot. And there was this lowly engineer on the status poll, and this lowly engineer had said, you know, the O-rings might fail under cold weather conditions. And the people making the decision looked at that, and they looked at the fact that they would disappoint people about delaying the launch, and they figured, well, you know, in the past we've gotten away with it, it'll probably be all right. And it turns out that 73 seconds later, it was not all right. And they managed to kill an extraordinary crew. So the good news, the only good news about that, is that NASA really is a pretty smart agency, and they revised their decision-making capabilities based on that. But I can tell you that our Congress and your decision-makers have not changed their tune about the way that they make decisions. And they need to. They need to understand mathematical aspects of exponential growth. They need to understand ecological literacy, and they need to understand ethical literacy, or they'll wind up in serious problems. What we want to do is to encourage innovation, let the bright bulbs of innovation shine, and not be afraid of the downside risk of technologies. There's always some risk. We need to manage it intelligently. As my first boss, Alan Kay, said, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And he did that. In 1972, he invented this dynamo, and then now we have something that looks a hell of a lot like that today. What we want to do is not just solve problems, we want to engage our creativity and our curiosity. This is a postcard, a self-portrait from Mars, from the Curiosity robot. We want to not just be enmeshed in solving our crisis problems. We want to get beyond that and really create the future together. Remember, the sky is not the limit. Thank you very much.